Hello and welcome back to another live chat, everyone. I am so excited that you are here and thank you so much for being here. I'm going to take a minute to say to all of the fathers out there, happy Father's Day to all of you. Funny story, I completely forgot it was Father's Day today when I woke up. I, in fact, was already thinking about it last night because we had a big family just dinner together. And so in my head, yesterday was Father's Day. That's just what ends up happening. So how's everybody doing? How are you all? So Lyle, it's funny. I don't think I ever told you it was like my birthday coming up anytime soon. How do you know it's my birthday coming up soon? I'm sure it's like somewhere deep within probably not deep within the Instagram pictures or whatever, but yeah. All right. Yes, so my birthday is coming up soon. The boys are now officially starting to talk about it, and I will be halfway to 70 years old. So it's a huge joke in the house. I cannot believe that I'm actually going to end up being that old very, very soon. All right. Yeah. So how's everybody going? How's everyone doing? I'm assuming it's safe to say that right now, every single person that is in this chat is out of school, right? Like you are not in school anymore. And bless it if you are in school. I don't even have words for you. But I am going to go ahead and assume that you are all outside of school. I had curriculum writing. So for those of you who don't know, I write curriculum with my district. And it's interesting because the curriculum that I have for bridging literacy is very different than what I do with my district. So it's like two polar opposite pieces. I mean, there's good teaching practices that you're going to see within it, but they're two very, very different pieces. And so I was working all week this week. And I would get up and I would have to go and do my Zoom. And I stayed on Zoom from 8 to 3 o'clock, literally pretty much the entire time. I think they gave us a lunch break and stuff, but it was a really, really long time to be on Zoom talking about curriculum. Like towards like this last 2 days, I was absolutely over it. So, but it was interesting. I am glad that I can finally say I am done for summer. I think I have to do one workshop class like towards the end of July. I did not volunteer to do any workshops for my district, so I will not be teaching anything this year, just because I had way too many things on my plate. So I had to say no to some things, and that is okay. But I have to attend a workshop class, and it's just one day of Zoom from 8 to 3 later in July, so that should be pretty easy. But other than that, I mean, that's really it until the next school year, and we really haven't heard anything as far as what the year is going to be like. I am very interested. Like, have you guys heard anything as far as what your districts are going to be doing, counties, wherever it is that you are, as far as what are some of the expectations or what do they kind of project your school year is going to look like in the fall? I know that they have 3 options for us, which is go to school full time, don't go to school full time, and maybe go a little bit of the time and not the other time. It's incredibly broad right now. So I did hear, though, that we may end up having to wear a mask while we teach. And we all know children don't listen to us without a mask on. The likelihood of them listening to us with a mask on is slim to none. So that would be incredibly interesting and really excruciating all at the exact same time. So, oh man, Rochelle girl, Texas is incredibly hot. That's like one of the main reasons why I married my husband is to get away from the South. That's not the real reason. But I spent 20 years in Texas and it is hot. Like you step out of the house and you are automatically sweating. It is ridiculous and I can't handle it. So Allison said that her state has full capacity opening in the fall, but it's entirely by county, so we don't know. And I think Pennsylvania is doing the same idea, where they're pretty much allowing the districts to decide as far as how they're going to proceed in the fall. So that'll be interesting. So Lola says there may be a hybrid model, some days on, some days off. That was kind of one of the options that we were also looking at too. So it'll be interesting. Yeah, Rochelle says I want to move. Girl, come up north. Love it in Pennsylvania. I have to say though, like in the South, people are like, you have that like Southern happiness. Just everybody was really, really nice to everyone. When I came up here, it was like a little bit of a culture shock to me because I felt like everybody was so mean. I cried almost every day for a year to Trent about how people were just so unbelievably mean up north. And it's just because they didn't have our Southern charm, is what I like to say. No offense to anyone who's up in the north. So, hi guys. I am very excited to talk about this one, and today's is going to be a little bit more of a chat. We're just kind of going to go back and forth, no super fancy, moving of the cameras. I do have my little slide just to kind of help me keep on track because I do tend to lose focus because I'm a rambler. But it is going to be very conversational, and I really hope that you guys are a part of this conversation as we go about. So I am going to be asking you guys some questions. It's going to be a little bit more interactive than some of the other ones. And it's a good thing because we're talking about independent time for ELA, which I'm going to get to in just a minute. So let's go ahead. We're going to jump into part 9 of what?
Cheat sheet.
I'm going to get there. He's telling me what to do.
She didn't do it last time.
Yeah. All right. So bridging literacy, guys. I am going to go ahead, and I feel like I didn't do this for the first 7 of them. And I want to talk a little bit about bridging literacy before we jump right on into it, okay? So this idea of bridging literacy, the entire purpose of it is about making connections between reading and writing. And I know so many teachers are out there and they're like, well, duh, we already do that. Absolutely. I know that you are already doing it. However, the model that I'm offering to you is a little bit different in that it truly does connect your standards and what it is that your students are writing. It defines the purpose for writing, which a lot of teachers, and I was one of these teachers, okay? So a lot of teachers don't get that part. They don't understand it. And y'all, I remember moving from kindergarten to 4th grade. And when I was in 4th grade, that very first year, I had no flipping idea what I was supposed to be doing in writing. I literally was winging it all the time. I felt like I kind of was figuring things out, but it just never really felt right. I felt like it was too fluffy to me. And I was trying resources out on TBT, and I was incorporating a lot of those different activities, but it just didn't feel right. It didn't feel authentic, and it really wasn't me. So I'm a little bit more of kind of a chill teacher. I know you probably are thinking, oh my gosh, I don't imagine you being a chill teacher, but I am. I really, really am. I don't like to do all the flamboyant, crazy fun stuff. I do sometimes, but that's not me. I really want it to be more conversational. That's probably one of the best things I love about teaching is just having conversations with kids. Because one, they're really, really smart. They're incredibly wise and they have really interesting things to say. And two, I just think they're funny. They have the funniest things that come out of their mouths. And so I enjoy listening to them and talking to them about different things. And then also because I feel as though I am watching them grow before my eyes when we have those conversations. So I truly value those conversations, and that's kind of where I spend the majority of my time as a teacher. But when I was trying to do this whole writing, whatever it was in 4th grade, I was a little lost and I didn't really understand what my purpose was. What was it that I was supposed to be teaching? What is it supposed to even look like? What does 4th grade writing look like? And that was hard for me. And then when I became a multi-age teacher, I had 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. And I was like, whoa, now what is it really supposed to look like? How am I supposed to define the differences between the 3 of them and really know where they are? Now, yeah, we can all talk about paragraphs all day long. Well, 4th grade should have 3 paragraphs. 6th grade should have 5 paragraphs. That's great. But how does the writing change? How does that part look different? That's where bridging literacy came. I remember back in kindergarten, I would always connect everything. I lived my entire day around making connections for my kindergartners because they really valued it. And I had a lot of ELs in my class. And so it was incredibly important that I didn't try to throw new things at them. Instead, I wanted to make the connections to other things that we were already doing so that it was easier for them to process. And brain tells us, y'all, I've been doing a lot of brain-based like research when it comes to like my grad class, and it's been really interesting. But the brain-based research that is out there says that when we give opportunities to make connections, that's when we're able to really process our memory into like that long-term piece. So, with all of that saying, I felt like there was a better way. If I could teach connections and I can connect things in kindergarten, why was I not able to do it in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade? What was I kind of missing? And really, the biggest piece is the structure. It's how I structured my day. I didn't change. I didn't do any like crazy new inventions when it came to really great reading strategies. No, I'm doing the same reading strategies that you're doing it. I'm just kind of moving it and manipulating it in a way that it just makes sense. And so that's what bridging literacy does. And I get a lot of questions about, hey, does this work in small group or whole group? Yes, it works with anything that you want it to work with. You can teach it in small groups. You can teach it to your entire class as a whole group. You can even teach it in grades 2, 3, 1K, all of them. Why? Because it's making connections to what they're reading. And that's how we understand things. When we make those connections, we understand it so much more. We just have to help guide kids on how to make those connections. So, bridging literacy is the connection piece for you. And so I have gone through with the fourth through 6th grade. Those are the only ones that I have available right now. But hold on, he's going to tell me I need to do this. Boom, it should be coming up in the chat. So 4th through 6th grade, I have an entire cheat sheet that will help you get started with bridging literacy right away. You don't have to pay for anything. You don't have to become a part of my membership. You don't have to go out and buy the units when those get there. If you feel comfortable and you know what it is it means to go ahead and start bridging literacy with all of the videos that I've put up here from part 1 to part 10 that will be next Sunday, then do it. Run with it. I am telling you, go for it, because it can be done. I promise you, you don't need all of the other things that I'm going to give you. This is just here to help kind of guide you along the way if you need that help and that support. But these are the units, and these units are especially designed to be able to help you make those connections. And so it kind of lays it all out. You can go ahead and click in that link that's right in the description box, and then you will have the opportunity to download those from your email, and then you can get started with them right away. They're completely aligned to Common Core, so all of the standards are in there. You can even go through and check it, because I guarantee you it's in there. I spent a lot of time doing those. So yes, I love this model. I think it is incredibly powerful. And I did mention in there that I do have a membership, and you are welcome to join my membership. We have been saying this, and I know we've been saying it for probably about 2 months now, but the membership is going to be changing, because as I'm starting to kind of evolve, it's kind of always been something that's in the works. And it's like, okay, I need kind of people to help guide me along to what it needs to look like. Because I know in my head what bridging literacy is, but without you guys asking questions, then I don't know exactly what it is that you need to know so that you can start making those steps to implementing it into your classrooms. So,
First lessons in units are
visible. Do you want to grab me? I don't know if you're going to be able to get it because you're going to get right in front of the camera. Oh, that was Trent, guys. You guys saw a little sneak peek of him. He hates being on camera, so you are all really lucky. You saw my husband's belly.
Aw.
You did.
I've been working on that for 30-some years now.
You left the laptop over there.
Hold on a second.
All right, we're going to just wait. We'll just wait, guys. All right, here we go. I am going to give you guys a little bit of a sneak peek because I have been working on units. And I did mention this just a little bit, but I have been working on units. And so what I am doing is I am writing out lesson plan units with the resources for each of the units that are going to be in this cheat sheet, okay? So I'm starting with Unit 1, which is personal narrative, which is what you would start the school year with. Unit 1, and it goes into personal narrative. You have your 4 reading strategies, and it has all of the resources. So here's kind of a little sneak peek. I'm not going to show you a down view because, like I said, it's a sneak peek. Let me see if I have the other page. I don't have the other page. No, I'm not making you walk in front of that again. So I'm going to show you some of the lessons because it's in that book, Extra Yarn. Yeah. He went underneath the camera. So it has way more than what I'm going to show you right here, but I went on ahead and printed some out because I had one of the lessons completely done and I just wanted to go through it, and I like paper. But one of the things that you're going to see in that lessons is that I'm going to give you day-to-day, like play-by-play for the entire month. So you have to keep in mind these unit plans are for reading, writing, vocabulary, grammar, word study, all of it. Okay, it is all combined into one unit, so one lesson plan essentially. So this is kind of the month at a glance view. It tells you all of the lessons that you're going to do, and then it also tells you what the kids are going to do independently, which we're going to get into in just a little bit. So this is one of the lessons that you're going to see there. It kind of gives you your resources. It tells you what the purpose is, tells you how to present the lesson. It gives you the assessment option, and it goes into modification and differentiation. And I also show you little pictures of the resources down there in the bottom just to make it really cute and useful. But I go through every single one of the lessons. As you can see, I'm sitting there and I'm typing the entire lesson out. So it gives you all of it inside of that. I finished up lesson 2 today actually, right? Lesson 2, I finished that one today. And I'll be working on those a little bit more and sharing those out very, very soon. But you guys ready to talk about independent time? I felt like that was really long-winded. All right, so let's go ahead and let's get into it. By the way, I have coffee. What do you guys have to drink? Be honest. Are you watching the comments over here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here we go, guys. So we're going to talk about independent work time. This is probably the question that I get asked the most. What are your kids doing independently? And so I mentioned that we're going to have a lot of a back and forth type of a conversation. So please be ready, Brooklyn. I love you. That's awesome. Very nice. But we're going to talk first about the purpose of independent time. Okay, so before I start to ask you a bunch of other questions, let's talk about the purpose of it. The purpose of this independent work time, when you really think about it, it's the opportunity for students to be able to practice whatever it is that they're learning in their group or whole group, and they're trying to implement that into their independent reading. So on top of them practicing whatever strategy or skill that you have them doing, they're also reading, right? Because studies show, and I know you guys have seen that graphic out there, kids need an opportunity to just read. We don't give them enough opportunities to just read. So with that, we want our kids to be able to read, and we want them to practice what we're teaching them. That's kind of the general purpose of independent work time. So I'm going to have you start thinking to yourself. You don't have to put this into the chat yet, but I want you to go ahead and start thinking to yourself, is everything, excuse me, that you are doing with your kids, what you have them doing during independent time, is it meeting those two pieces, those two big pieces of criteria? Them just reading, and 2, practicing what you are specifically teaching in group, okay? So be thinking about that as we go along. But one of my biggest things, and this has probably been since I moved to Pennsylvania, is I try to stick to an 80-20 rule. How many of you guys have heard of the 80-20? I think it's really well known in the business world, isn't it?
Yep.
Trent's nodding his head. It's really well known into the business world, and they say that if the 20% of the effort that you make produces 80% of the results or something like that.
Well, there's lots of versions.
There's lots of different versions out there.
Focus.
However, here's kind of how I think of the 80-20 when it comes to ELA time. So 20% of that time, and I want you to think of my entire ELA block, 20% of the ELA block that I have is spent like with a teacher learning something, right? So they are working with me and I am modeling some sort of a strategy or something or another. That's 20% of that time. The remaining 80% of that ELA time is spent where they're just practicing. So this is, I think, the biggest flip that I really started making when I was in 4th grade, because I think it is incredibly normal, or is it natural, or is it just customary? I don't really quite know the right wording to use for that, but I think as teachers, it's easy to talk and teach for 80% of that time, and we can just keep going and going. We're like little Energizer bunnies. And so we would keep going and going and going with all of the information that we wanted to give them, but only leaving them with that 20% to be able to go back and really work. So at the end of the day, they're having to take a bunch of stuff home, but when they take things home, they're tired. And I get it. When you go home, you're tired. You don't want to do work. Our kids are the same way. They don't want to work. I mean, you have to think it's just like you. You don't want to have to sit down and do even more. They have chores, they have sports, they have other things going on in their lives. And when we're giving them work that they're not able to finish because we're spending so much of our time talking or teaching to our kids, they're having to take that home and they're not into it at that moment. So I want you to kind of flip your whole mindset. And I really want you to think about 20% of that ELA block is going to be spent with the teacher giving instruction. The remainder 80 is going to be spent just having the kids do their practice. Okay?
So you got a comment that I think you would...
Okay.
You see it?
No? Which one?
LaDonna.
Oh, okay. So LaDonna says, phonics skills, yes, but not all students are at grade level. So it's hard to have them practice on at level text without scaffolding or some type of... Kagan? I don't know what Kagan means. So here is how I'm going to explain it to you. So LaDonna, here's how my kiddos do it. I have, in my class, I said I teach 4th through 6th grade, but really I'm teaching 1st grade to 6th grade. So I have a group, one kid I still have him because he's coming back to me next year. I had one kiddo who was on a level 14, which is a 1st grade reading level. I had another kiddo who was on a level, I want to say it was a 24, which is like a 2nd grade. And then I had a couple of them that were on really early 3rd grade reading levels. And it was a struggle for them. It was a total struggle. However, I still followed that rule. But for them, it looked a little bit different, okay? So I will be very honest with you. When you have kids who are not on grade level and they're not getting the materials that they need, it is going to look a little bit different for those kiddos. And here's how it looked for them. So they would come to group with me and their groups looked a little bit more guided reading group, okay? Instead of just like a normal skills group that I would give. So they would come to me, we would practice different things, and then I would send them off to work. Now, when I sent them off to work, they had a number of things that they had to do. Now, you can create like a checklist, you can have a center situation. I didn't want to have a center because to me, it just makes them uncomfortable when you have an entire class who's not doing centers. So I chose not to go that route. But I still had listening to reading. I still had that they had to do certain word work. And I still had that they had to go back out and practice something and they read. Now, when they chose books to read, we had like a special folder system where they had like certain books that they absolutely had to read first before we went into the whole, like, you can choose whatever it is that you want to read, because I wanted them to practice their fluency. I also have fluency cards that I've gotten from Lakeshore that I really, really love. And I had those kiddos use things like that. And it was a really good opportunity for them to just read. Just because they're not on grade level doesn't mean that they still don't love reading and they can't read by themselves. Even as a kindergarten teacher, how many of you know Daily 5? Put a thumbs up, hand up, emoji, something. How many of you have ever heard of Daily 5? I'm gonna wait.
I've heard of Daily 5.
Trent, Dan, well, of course you've heard of it because I come home and I write the order. Okay, so Daily 5, fun fact, I did it my first year of teaching in kindergarten. My second year of teaching in kindergarten, I specifically remember this, okay guys? Specifically remember this happening. And y'all, I was about to lose my mind as a teacher. Like, my Latina blood was gonna come out of me at that moment. Thank goodness it didn't. But I'm sitting there, and I'm like, got my group going, and I'm feeling good about my group. I'm helping all my little kiddos, doing my little thing. And then all of a sudden, here's kind of what I do. I stand up, and I go and I just walk around. I just walk. And I do that periodically because I just want to see what kids are doing. Well, I had a couple of kiddos who had no idea that I was up walking around because I'm super, super stealth-like. And so I was all sneaky and kids didn't see me. And as I'm walking around, one of the things that I noticed is they had the dry erase marker, which y'all know those are cheap. Those are expensive. They're not cheap. And so that baby had the little dry erase marker and he was going over that really beautifully laminated word worksheet that I had just done not that long ago. And he's sitting there just going in circles. In circles, all on that beautiful little sheet that I just made. And then all of a sudden I see over there off the corner of my eye, and I had a really, really good class, and I had behavior management down like it was no one's business. But all of a sudden I turn around, and then of course I have kids who are just sitting there, and they're at the poetry station, and they're like, they're not reading a single word. They're just taking that little finger and they're hitting those words, acting like they're reading. What's the purpose? What's the point? What was the point of me sitting in the middle of my living room trying to make all of those resources? What's the point of me spending hours and hours on Friday night trying to reorganize all of my stations? What's the point? So finally, after that, I felt like I had my breaking point. And I had gone to some really, really great convention. It was the Alabama Reading Initiative convention that I was able to go with one of my reading coach at that time and a few other teachers. And it absolutely changed my world. I met Stephanie Harvey. I met Donna Miller. I met some of the most iconic people in education when it comes to literacy instruction. It was amazing. Got them to sign my books, by the way. Super excited. But I looked and I went to my principal right after that. And I said, I don't want to do Daily 5 anymore. I was doing it because everybody else was doing it. I was told I had to do it. And I told her, I said, I don't want to do this anymore. There is no purpose. I don't see the love of reading in my kids. And even as a kindergarten teacher, I took Daily 5 away and I completely revamped my classroom that year. And I said, I just want my kids to read. And lo and behold, when I spent the time helping them understand what they were doing, they read. So no matter what grade level you are, no matter how big of a difference your kids are, they can still love reading. They can still have that opportunity to just sit down and read a book. And if you have other resources available, great. Give them those other resources. Let them have access to those resources. Teach them how to use those resources. I mean, think about it now. How many of you listen to podcasts or audiobooks? I love audiobooks. It's one of the very few ways that I actually read because I have so many things going on with my life. Now, I know there's that whole, everybody says, well, that's not really reading. Yes, it is. I'm enjoying a book. I'm thinking about it. I'm asking questions. Isn't that what good readers do? They ask questions, they analyze it, they synthesize the information. I'm doing that. Who's to say that isn't reading just because I'm not looking at the words? So give your kids those resources. I'm going to a huge tangent. Give your kids those resources, and I promise you that you can have them do that. I promise you. I would not be sitting here telling you this if I felt like you would not be able to do this. I promise you, you can. All right, moving on. If we think, all right, I like to think of my independent reading time. Now, here's where you guys are about to go into, thank you, girl. Rochelle, I love you. You're so wonderful. She said, preach, Bridget. Woo! So here's what I want you to do. You're about to start typing, okay? So here's my question for all of you. If you had like the utopian society, like the most perfect, ideal, independent work time possible, what would it look like to you? What would it look like? What would you want your kids to be doing? Okay? If you had the most utopian, like absolutely perfect independent time, what would it be? What would it be? I see myself talking in the screen. It's always a little weird because it's like a little delayed.
It's like a 15-second delay, I think.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I do hunch. Shoulders down, Bridget. Guys, I'm gonna have a hunchback. I'll be doing these YouTube videos in 20, 30 years and I'm gonna be like this. So what would you have your independent time look like? Chances are that as you're sitting there typing, I'm gonna go ahead and try to read your minds from the internet. Chances are that as you're sitting there thinking about it, you want your kids working on goals. You want them completing assignments. You want them collaborating with others, talking, having conversations about books. You want them asking questions to the peers next to them, helping others. You want it to be truly independent. You want them reading stories for enjoyment. You want them writing about their reading. You want them to just write stories that they come up with. But you want them to also to make sure that they recognize that there's room for growth and that they're going to grow, right? That right there, all of that is autonomy. It's learner autonomy. Every single piece of that. It's instilling the love of learning in kids, which is really, really hard. And unfortunately, the way that we have this industrial model, this, this practice that we've been doing for over 100 years, it doesn't work to build learner autonomy. We have kids relying on us more than ever before for everything. Miss Backman, where's the pencil sharpener? Baby, where do you think a pencil sharpener would be? Where's the trash can? My pencil broke. Why would they ask us that? Why would they be asking us that if we haven't had such a, if we haven't really allowed kids to be independent? They're so unbelievably dependent on us as teachers, as parents, as everything. They cling to us for everything. That as a teacher, in order to have this huge ideal independent work time that you want to have, and I will tell you right now, sitting here, I will tell you that even my independent work time is not all the way there. Because I have to instill autonomy into every single one of my students. And of course, we know kids learn at different rates, at different paces, they learn in different ways. And so they're going to build that autonomy in a different way as well. But you have to kind of figure each kid out. You have to learn them. You have to figure out what makes it click, what makes things work. And little by little by little, you're going to start to see them grow. Now, I'll tell you guys, I have a really, really big benefit over so many of you because I am a multi-age teacher. I get my kids for 3 years unless their parents truly hate me with all their might and they decide they're going to pull their kids out of the MAC team, which doesn't happen very often, but it's fine. Can't please everyone. But you know, I have my kids for 3 years and I have to tell you, they grow so much. So when I sit here and I'm telling you some of the things that I'm going to tell you about independent work time, I'm not telling it to you because I know that it's just, you know, it'll be 1 year. You're going to see some growth in 1 year. I promise you, you will if you do this. But I think we as teachers together have to do this together. We all have to implement this in some ways, and we have to let go of controlling every single moment. Because the more we control every single one of those moments, our kids are not going to think for themselves. They're going to continue to ask you where that sharpener is. They're going to continue to ask you what book they should be reading. They're going to continue to ask you what they should be doing because we haven't taught them to be independent thinkers. Okay? That's learner autonomy. So, I'm going to break a little bit of bad news. Bad news is you're not going to reach every single kid. It's just not going to happen. Even now, in my day, I still have a couple of kiddos, a handful of kiddos that I have to kind of stay on top of. Now, I am going to give you some tips and tricks towards the end of the video about how you can start to help some of those kiddos. But I promise you, you will see growth. I have a range of students in my class. I have ELs, I have children who are diagnosed with autism, I have learning support, I have gifted students, so I have them all, okay? And so when I tell you that I have certain kiddos that are truly, truly defiant, and bless them, they hate reading and writing with every bone in their body, but they loved it towards the end of the year, before Corona, pre-COVID, okay? Post-COVID, when we go back, I don't know if they're going to love it as much, but that's okay. We're going to start back at ground zero. We're just going to build up from there, guys. But you will see some difference, and that's going to matter to that kid when they continue to grow. And the more and more we can get other teachers to kind of recognize that these are the changes that we need to be making with our kids, the more we're going to start to notice in the kids coming up to us every single year. Okay. I feel like I'm truly on a tangent. So how's it going in the chats?
A lot of your ideal rooms sounded a lot like what you were describing. Engagement and just enjoying it. Learning from learning, or learning and reflecting.
Yeah.
Children or kids discussing their books, sharing.
So what do you guys think? Is it kind of like yeah, I think she's kind of right. Do you agree with the fact that it could just be learner autonomy that builds that ideal independent work time? Or do you disagree with that? And you're totally welcome to disagree with it. It's just what I have found as a teacher and as a mom, and in the research that I've done on what truly has really made that difference. So I would love to hear kind of what you all think as far as is whether or not, you know, you think that learner autonomy has that connection towards that independent time. Thank you, Cheryl. She says, you are on target. I'm on it. Right it. Bullseye. Okay. So let's talk now about the struggles that we have. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to think about what are the struggles, the biggest struggles that you have. You can just list one of them. How about that? List one of the biggest struggles or two that you have when it comes to independent work time. And be totally honest, and then I'm going to share mine in just a second. I'm going to mute you guys because I got to ask Trent something, and I don't want you guys to hear all about it. So I'm going to give you a second to go and do that. All right. So I want you, like I said, to put in the comments, what are some of the biggest struggles that you have when it comes to independent time? Biggest struggles. I will tell you guys the questions. How many of you have you're sitting in group or you're, yes, I see that one. That's very true, Cheryl. I can totally see that one. But one of the things that I think for me it would always be that you're sitting in group and then all of a sudden it's like they come up to you and they're asking, and you're like sitting there with a kid and you're like having a really good conversation, and then all of a sudden you have like a kid that's standing right behind you and they're just sitting there, or because they would do this or they would do this, and they're just standing right next to you and they're like, hey, and you're like, baby, you're supposed to do that at your seat, not when you're next to me. Okay, so working slow, that's typically a really good one that a lot of people have. Wandering around the room and messing with peers, that is a huge one. Student with writer's block. And Rachel, I have some ideas for that. And I think one of the biggest things when it comes to the writer's block is that we need to support them better. And I promise you, with Bridging Literacy, you're going to notice that kids are being supported so much more when it comes to their writing. So that will help to kind of eliminate that completely. Kids off task. Kids do work really slow, don't they? It's crazy. Like they just they drag with everything. I even see it with Ian. Probably not Blaine. He's like a little Tasmanian. He's zooms. But like even Ian is just like a slow worker. It's like there's no sense of urgency, okay? So I would often tell my kids, I was like, come on, you need to walk like you have a purpose. Walk with a purpose. You gotta have a purpose. You need to do something. Let's go for it. But yes, they have a tendency to do things very slowly. Pretending to work. Oh, that's a good one. Oh, Trent laughs because he did that when he was younger, probably.
That was a little bit of all of them, except the slow. I wanted to win the race.
Trent is admitting that he was all of them except for the slow one. Let's see. I see.
Leslie had a reminder about the modeling and practicing at the beginning.
Yes. The lack of time they have for independent time because only have 45 minutes every other day. Wow, that's crazy. Stamina. That's a huge one. Stamina is a huge one. And hopefully, Leslie, I have some really good ideas that are going to be in here. And we'll talk a little bit about those too. Flying through work, right? They just do it just to do it. And they don't even, Trent's like, yep, that was him.
I win.
Did not even think about it, didn't care, just wanted to have it done. Absolutely. We have a lot of those. Okay, so we have an idea of what it is that our struggles are, right? It's always really easy to be able to identify those struggles, whether it's from the behavior issues that we end up having, the whole planning and preparation. I don't know about you guys, but that was probably the biggest thing for me when I was in kindergarten. And it really had nothing to do with the kids, but it was the planning and the preparation that I had to do just to make sure that everybody else was on task. It was a lot, and it was draining me as a teacher, and I didn't feel as effective, and I was feeling burnt out. Totally honest. Students asking questions, constantly walking around. I think a lot of those are the behavior pieces and just the focus. It's almost as if they just don't really have a desire to even be there in the first place. And so we have to kind of build that. And it's like, how do we, at that point, and I totally forgot to skip through, how do we get there? So how do we get to that point? How do we get to the point where we are helping our students be able to work and do work effectively? How do we get to the point where kids are not wandering around, where we don't have behavior issues happening, or we're not having to stop our groups every 20, 30 minutes just to make sure that kids are on task and doing what they're supposed to be doing? So how do we do this? And so I'm going to be sharing with you guys walk with a purpose. Yes, Allison, it's a very good one. I use that one quite often. But I'm going to share with you guys some of the things that I have done for independent time, okay? And please know that this is not the end all be all, right? These are just some ideas to kind of help you get started. And I do highly encourage you to ask questions as we go through this, because again, I don't know what you don't know. So I try to explain everything as much as possible. without spending, 3 hours and a day, whatever, talking about this whole topic. So, as we go into this, the first thing that I'm going to tell you is to introduce everything before you begin your workshop. Now, I know before some of you start kind of going into the comments, you're probably thinking, well, my district, my county doesn't do that. They want us to start day one. They want us to get cracking at it. And for that, I am very, very sorry. I don't really have any answers there except going to your principal and saying, we need time. We need time. This is not realistic. Everybody out there has some sort of the first 10 days or the first 20 days. We need that time. You need it. And ask them for it. And that is really, I hate that for you. And I truly think that when our administration gets to the point where they're so far removed from what's happening in the classrooms, that is when we start to have some of those issues. So, with that being said, hound your principal, see what happens. But be nice about it. Don't be mean about it. Just be assertive. So here's we go. So the first thing that I'm going to tell you, and one of the things that my students do every single day is read. They read independently. And I push it and I push it. And just like Leslie said, we have to build the stamina. And so I have to teach them those strategies of what does it look like to build stamina. And of course, every single one of us gets up there and we all talk about running, right? That's probably one of the biggest things. Or exercising. When you first start exercising, you can barely do it. I can barely walk up the stairs. I can barely go out for a 5-minute walk or run, whatever it is. But the more and more I do it, the more and more I push myself, the better and the further I'm going to be able to exercise or run. We have to kind of tell our kids that. But I think what we also forget a lot of the times, and we forget to tell our kids, is we have to remind them it's not easy. It's hard. And it sucks. It's not as fun as you think when you're learning to build that stamina. I mean, think about anything that you try to do and you're trying to get used to. You don't realize, you forget how hard it is, and which is why so many of us quit. And we have to be open and be with our kids and have that conversation and say, it's going to be hard. No one's sitting up here telling you that it's going to be really easy to focus on a book for 20, 30 minutes. It's not. But let's talk about some strategies. And so you don't want to come from the perspective of, guys, we have to stop. We're only 2 minutes into this, and now we have to all come back together and let's talk about what we did wrong. I saw people looking up. I saw people with their book down. I saw this and this. We have to stop that. We have to stop that. Instead, let's have real conversations with kids. And if you're pointing certain kids out, or if you see certain kids, pull those kids. That was probably one of the biggest pieces of feedback that I got from my students. Guys, I ask my students for feedback on my teaching all the time. We do it to college professors, but why don't we do it on ourselves? Why don't we ask for feedback from our own students when they're the ones with us every single day? And so I would very easily, on an index card, as an exit ticket to walk out of my room, say, hey, what's one thing you think I did really well today as a teacher? What is one thing you would like for me to improve on? On an index card, that's your ticket out. And they will very openly tell you what it is that they want to see change. And that was one of the biggest things, is that they felt like it was the worst thing that I was pulling everybody together when it was only a handful of kids that were having a hard time. And that was not fair to them because they're readers. They're already reading. They're reading every single day. They're reading for hours and hours in their room locked up. Like, they're doing it. So instead, why don't I just say, hey, student A, B, C, D, guys, why don't you come over here and take them back to my small group and say, hey guys, one of the things that I'm noticing is that I see that sometimes you tend to lose a little bit of focus, or you can't really think about any of the words. It's happened to me a lot. I do it a lot. Like, I will read a sentence and then I'll forget what that sentence said, and then I have to read the sentence again, and it was really hard to read that sentence again. I get it. So here's what I'm going to tell you. How about we start small? because sometimes putting ourselves into these really big chapter books because we want to try to be a big chapter book person is not the best way to start. So why don't we start with a picture book? And I have a huge collection of picture books. I have them all out in my room. I'm going to say, I want you to grab about 2 picture books and I want you to just read it and try to go through it. And it's okay to first flip through the pictures and read the pictures. That's okay. And then I want to have you go back and I want you to try to read the words the next time and do it with both of your books and see what you guys think after that. And so I would send them back off and I would let them keep doing their thing. And I promise you that the moment I take away the whole fear of having to read a gigantic book, that's intimidating. That I already want to quit. But when you give me something small to start with and say you can start with a picture book, here's a few picture books. Picture books are real books too. I put a big, huge thing at the very beginning of the year. Picture books are real books too. You can absolutely read them. A lot of them are so much more complex than chapter books nowadays. And so we have to allow our kids to be able to experience those in the beginning to build that stamina. And I tell my students, guys, if you feel like you're kind of tired of reading that chapter book, don't start a new chapter book, because Lord knows you will never be able to get through all those 5 chapter books that you're walking in with. How many of your students walk in with a binder and they've got like 5 big chapter books? It's like all of the Harry Potter series, and they're just like this. And you're like, baby, are you really reading all of those chapter books? And they're like, I'm reading all of them. At the same time, I'm reading all of them at the same time. No. You're hopping. Remember how Michelle and we talk a lot about, multitasking versus task switching. That's what your kids are doing. They're task switching. They're reading throughout. They're going from 1 to 1 to 1 to 1 to 1 to 1, but they're never really reading them all. They're just hopping. They're book hoppers. And so you have to teach kids that it's okay to stop in the middle of a chapter book and go grab a poetry book. Start with something like that, or grab a picture book. It's like, that's fine too. And so give those kids those opportunities to build that independent reading. You with me? Okay. So next thing, I have my kids read every day. There are probably 2 other really big things that I have my kids do, and I don't have my kids do a lot. So I don't have centers in my classroom. I don't have anything that it is that I feel as though they have to kind of switch. I want them to learn to sit. I want them to learn, well, not necessarily if they can't sit, because I have kids some kids just can't sit, but I want them to learn to stay on something for an extended period of time. And the only way that they're going to learn how to do that is when I kind of push them, and I push them out of their comfort zone, and I say, but I want you to go a little bit longer. And so a lot of the times with my kids who need their breaks, because I have kids who need breaks, I'll have a kid come up to me and they're like, I can't do this anymore. Or I notice like they're getting super agitated. I would go up to them. I would say, hey, listen, I notice right now that I feel like you're getting a little irritated with what you're working on. I completely get it. But I'm going to ask you that I want you to work for another 3 minutes. Okay? 3 more minutes. You do this for me for 3 more minutes and you get up to this point, and then I'm going to let you take a break. All right? I'll let you go to the bathroom. You could take a lap around the building, come back. I'll let you take a break, and then we'll get right back to work. And so I'll take on my Apple Watch. I'll say 3 minutes, and they'll agree. Majority of the time, I'm able to get them to agree with me. I'll set my timer for 3 minutes. After that 3 minute, I'll give them a signal. They'll walk out. Give them breaks. We all need breaks. Lord knows I need breaks. Sometimes I'm in some of these meetings, and I'm like, I need a break. I'm about to lose my mind. I'm about to go off on somebody. That's okay. It's human nature. We have to allow ourselves to have those breaks. We have to give those breaks, those opportunities for our kids too. They need to have that ability to be able to do that. And so when we're able to start treating them as like these mini adults, we're teaching them life skills that they're going to be able to take with them for years and years and years and years. Okay, so the next thing that I'm going to tell you is reading. And a lot of the times, the way that my days work is that when we first start school, it's typically like on a Wednesday, it's normally a Wednesday, and we go for 3 days. This is normally how my district schedule works. So we'll go for the 3 days, and typically we do nothing that has anything related to any sort of curriculum. Now, I am very, very blessed in the fact that we are given a lot of autonomy ourselves. We have the ability to make those decisions as teachers from our administration. So I'm incredibly grateful for that piece. And so once we have our 3 days, we'll begin the next day with a little bit of that curriculum. We'll start building in some of our workshops. So we talk a lot about what we know about each of the workshops. We'll go into it, into what does it look like, what does it sound like. But one of the first things that we automatically do is we introduce to the library, and we introduce them how to start independent reading. I don't make a stamina chart as a class. I don't build a huge stamina chart and keep track of it as an entire class. I don't do it. And the reason why is because I don't want to pressure kids to sit there and do this. Fake reading. When I sit there and I try to pressure all of my kids to do the same things, I am building a student who is going to fake read for me. And so I don't do that. I don't put that up anymore. I don't do any of that. Instead, I look at them as individuals and I say, you know what? Every single one of us, we are in a different place when it comes to our reading journey. Did you know you all have reading journeys? You do. You have a reading journey. From the day you started school, from the day you were born, you've been reading something. You've been reading signs, you've been reading, little words on cups, you've been reading things on cereal boxes, you've been reading things in schools. You have a reading journey. And we're all at a different place in our reading journeys. And so it's important to recognize that you are in a very special place for your own reading journey. And I don't make my kids do a stamina chart anymore either. Like, I used to have them build their own independent stamina chart. Y'all, that's a hot mess to try to do that. And any teacher who tries to do a stamina chart independently for 20-some kids in their class, every single day, it's a hot mess. Instead, again, I'm going to go back to what I said in the very beginning. I value the conversations that I have with my students. And that's how I know where my kids are in their reading journey. So I only will talk to them about independent reading and what does it look like. And so on that first day, I take out my clipboard with either a plain line sheet of paper or a blank piece of paper. You can make it pretty, you can do whatever you want, but you start walking around and you sit down with kids and you start talking to them. And you ask them, hey, what do you like? What are some of the things that you like? And if it's students that I've had in the past, because again, I'm multi-age, I would sit down and I would say, hey, how did your summer go? What was something new you learned? What was something new that you did? Are you still watching these type of movies? Are you still playing this game? Are you still doing this? How's brother? How's sister? Did you get a new animal? I would ask questions. And because when I sit down and I have those conversations with kids, the first reaction, typically my fourth graders, they're like, why are you talking to me? It's the best. But they do. They look at you like, why are you here? Because they're not used to teachers sitting down with them one-on-one unless they're in trouble. And that's a really bad way to get kids to view conversations, one-on-one conversations with their teacher, is to think that it only happens when they get in trouble. So I want to start having those conversations with the kids. And I really and truly feel that by sitting down with every single one of those kids and just hopping from kid to kid to kid to kid, I build connections with them. Because even the kids who are not paying attention, they are not focused, I can look at them after I just gotten talked with them and I would say, and they would look and say, you're already building that connection. You're already building a rapport with that student. And so I challenge you that when you go back, bless it, please, without masks. It would be great if we didn't have to social distance and individual conference with our students. It's a joke because you wouldn't be able to. Oh, I'm funny. I'm sorry, guys. I take this very seriously. I just lose my mind a little bit. So when we sit down and we start at the very beginning, you want to make sure that you're individual conferencing with your kids and you're building those connections and you're talking to them about what they like, not what they're reading. Don't start there. Just what do they like? What have they been up to? Who are they as individuals? Because I promise you, a lot of the times you're going to sit down and it's going to completely shock you. You're going to learn something about a kiddo that you were like, I would have never pegged that kid for being that type of a person. So it's important to kind of make those connections in the very beginning. And I know a lot of you out there have probably said you've seen somewhere where people will find books that kids are really passionate about and they'll leave a little note and said, hey, I found this book. I thought you might really like it. I've been doing that since kindergarten. I remember having boys who were so in love. Oh my gosh, you would remember. I'm looking at my husband on this one because he would remember this little boy. He was one that I did like the huge like collage. He was the little mini one. He had a big chunky face. He was so cute. I would just like squeeze his little chipmunk cheeks. But he loved any sort of cars, trucks, any of it. Cars and trucks, those were his thing. And so I remember going out and I would go to Second and Charles. If any of you have Second and Charles, I love Second and Charles. The closest one to me is Harrisburg, which is kind of sad. But I would go there and I would just find books for them. And they're pretty cheap for the most part. And it would add to my library, so it wasn't a big deal. But I would just put on a sticky note, hey, I knew that you liked trucks and I thought of you. And I thought these books might be something that you would like to look at. I remember one little boy, he cried and cried and cried in kindergarten. And he did not want to be with me at all. He loved soccer. And I found a magazine not that long right after he had started. I found a magazine. And that magazine had a bunch of soccer stars in it. And so I bought the magazine. Guys, he kept that magazine in his chair pocket all year long. This is back when I had chair pockets. But he kept it in his chair pocket all year long. And it was like his comfort blanket. It was something he just kind of kept with him because he knew that that was the thing that he really, really loved. And it was just that comforting piece that he needed to have with him. So, I mean, I feel like I could go forever and ever and ever on this topic, but yes, I would definitely encourage that.
You have them take notes while reading?
No.
I might repeat that.
So, somebody asked
Tatiana.
Who?
Tatiana?
Oh, okay. Tatiana said, do they take notes while reading? Not in the beginning. No, I don't. When I'm first just building a love for reading, I don't want them taking notes. I don't want them doing anything except reading and really kind of pushing themselves to challenge themselves to read a little bit more every single time. Teaching them to push themselves past that point that it's uncomfortable. Because that's the thing that we have to teach with our kids. We have to teach them to go past being uncomfortable. And so that's the only way that we're going to grow. If we constantly give up when we feel as though it's hard and we're done, we're not growing. And so I always tell my kids, guys, remember that moment that you feel it because you know it, all of you know it. When that moment when you feel I'm done, I can't read anymore. I want you to push yourself just a little bit more and just say, nope, I'm going to push myself a little bit more and I'm going to read a little bit more. Because when we push ourselves past that point of being uncomfortable and we kind of get past that, that is when you start to truly grow as a learner and as a reader. So challenge them to go past that point, and we have to teach them that because they don't know it. Nobody's actually sat there and explicitly told them that. Everybody just says, oh, it's fine. You can go ahead and just stop. No. Push yourself a little bit more. Give yourself 3 more minutes. Give yourself however, 1 more page. Push yourself just a little bit more. Okay, the next thing that we do, so we talk about reading independently, then we talked a little bit about, oh my gosh, I am talking a lot. Guys, I'm really sorry. Trent left because I'm talking so much. The other thing that I do, other than just having them read independently, is that I have them start reflecting at the beginning of the year. So during that time when we're really kind of going through our workshop, and I wait a good week. When we start going through our workshop, we will specifically tell them, hey, we're going to start to learn how to reflect. Because in the Bridging Literacy model, one of the things that we have students do on a weekly basis is reflect. They reflect about their learnings from the week. They reflect about everything. And you don't want to start teaching kids how to reflect when you're in it, when you're already in the curriculum, you're getting into it. It's really, really difficult. Kids are not going to know where they're supposed to be going. So instead, we have to teach kids how to reflect beforehand. And when I think about reflection, it's more of that kind of TDA piece. How do you want them to restate the question? How do you want them to answer it? What type of evidence do you want them to support it? But start small. I don't have them go all out the way that I do at the end of the year. It does not look the same, okay? So at the beginning of the year, they might be giving me 3 sentences for 4th grade, okay? Obviously, 5th and 6th graders are going to look a little bit different because I've already had them. But if they haven't had you in the past, then you can't expect that they're going to come in knowing how to reflect, because most likely they don't. Start small in the very beginning and teach them how to reflect, and start with things like, tell me what was one of the best things that happened in the day. Start easy. It doesn't have to be about their learning. It can simply be about the school day. But you have to teach kids how to start reflecting, how to start writing, and more importantly, well, to me, this is incredibly important, how to format everything. Like, how do I format my page? Kids who flip through things, this is probably one of my biggest pet peeves ever, is the formatting of Google Docs and the formatting of writing on paper. I am incredibly particular about it. It is just the way I am. I like things to be certain ways. And I tell kids that. I said, guys, this is probably going to be the most ridiculous thing that you're going to think, that I'm going to ask of you ever. And it's mainly because I am very particular about it. It's a pet peeve of mine. But you know what? If something was a pet peeve of yours, I would do my very, very best to respect that and not do that in front of you. So I'm asking you to respect that about me and to do this so that I can be able to get through these pieces. And it's all about teaching that part. The other part that I'm going to talk about is collaborating. This is also a really, really big piece that I teach at the beginning of the year. And mainly, I teach kids how to talk to one another because we don't know how to disagree in a nice way. I'm just going to say it. Kids are not nice when they start to want to tell each other what they're doing wrong. And they don't really know how to respond when someone's telling them that they don't agree with their ideas. And that's when you start to get the big fights, right? Miss Spackman, such and such person said this about me, or they called me this. Okay? It's because we don't know how to disagree. We don't know how to have conversations. So the biggest thing that I drive home every single, beginning of every single year is how to disagree. How to have those conversations, and how to have those conversations respectfully and calmly. So that when I say something, a kid doesn't have to agree with me. I never said kids have to agree with me. However, they need to agree with me in a way that is respectful. I teach respect. And so they come to me and they'll say, you know what, Mrs. Spackman, I see your point. However, I still believe this because of this. Or I'm going to have to say I disagree with you, but I hear what you're saying. And here's why. Here's the reason why. We have to teach kids how to have those conversations and how to agree and disagree with one another. We just have to. And I think when we take the time and we really help kids understand it, that is when this gorgeous ball of collaboration occurs within our students. It is the most wonderful feeling when you walk over to a group and they're having conversations about what's happening in the book, and they're agreeing and disagreeing, and they're coming back with other ways, and they're looking at different perspectives. When they're able to do that, that's collaboration. And we have to teach that with our kiddos. The other thing that I do, so I have my kids read every day. They reflect or complete some sort of practice, right? Some written practice. And then we collaborate with each other. The final thing that I have my kids do during independent time is something called a book talk. Now, I'm really excited about book talks. Is incredibly essential in my classroom, but I am only going to go into detail with it whenever it's next Sunday. So next Sunday, we're going to chat all about book talks and how I implement those into my classroom. I will tell you guys that I do have book talk, like a pack. What is that? A pack? It's not a pack. What is that? A product. There you go. Where I have put together all of my book talk resources. You can absolutely go and check those out. As far as that resource, can you put that up on there, the chat for them? Trent's going to put that into the chat for you.
It's free for members.
Free for members. So if you are a member of the Bridging Literacy community, it is free. It's in the resources page. So we're going to chat a lot about book talks next Sunday, which I really, really love. Okay, so here's the other piece, and I know I've gone way over, and I'm going to try to kind of rush through it, and I'm very, very sorry, guys. The other thing that I have to tell you is that you kind of teach everything before you get your workshop going. Don't try to teach, first of all, don't try to teach them everything under the moon on the first day, right? I'm not going to try to throw at them independent reading, the reflections, the book talks, all of it. I'm not going to put it all together in one huge shot. It's not even going to be every day. Like every day they learn something new. No, sometimes it's like in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Typically, I don't even start book talks until well within my units. So I've already started doing my small groups and I've already taught my units, and I don't even teach them what book talks is until later on. And so that's okay for you to do that if you need to have that piece of it a little bit later, but just kind of recognize what works for you and for your students. But the biggest thing more than anything is that we have to scaffold our kids. We have to scaffold the process for them. We have to stop introducing everything right at the, like boom, all at once. Here it is. This is what reading workshop is, or here's what your reflections should look like. Boom. We have to scaffold it in a way that makes sense. All right, what is the first thing that you would really, really want for them? Is it just to restate the question? Great. Teach them how to restate it, let them get really good at it, and then throw a new piece at them. When we do that, we're allowing them to practice little bit by little bit. When you go and exercise, you're not going to throw yourself at all of the different machines. You're going to get really good at one machine, and when you feel good at that machine, you're going to add another machine on. That's just the way that we do things. That's the way that our bodies and our minds are able to kind of continue and keep going. If not, we're going to set ourselves up for failure. So scaffold, don't forget that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the other stuff. What's
Leslie,
that?
I had one question.
Go ahead.
Do you give free choice in collaborative groups? Do they get to choose who's in the groups?
So Leslie asked, do you give free choice in collaborative groups, as in free choice to choose who is in the group? Yes, absolutely. And the reason I do that, now typically within my class, it's a little bit different, obviously, because they get free choice within their 4th grade groups and then the 6th grade group. Like, I can't have a 6th grader working with a 4th grader because they're not on the same curriculum, right? But whoever's in that curriculum, they can work with whoever they want. And the reason I say this is because, one, I want them to know that I trust them automatically. I don't want them coming in thinking that I do not trust them. The first thing I always give my students is my complete trust. And then once we start kind of getting through, this group is super, super chatty, I'm going to talk to those kids a little bit. And I'm going to say, listen, I notice you guys are chatty. And that's okay to be chatty sometimes. It's fine. But I need you to remember that you're here for a purpose. So I'm going to give you a few more tries. And if you don't end up making some of these changes, I'm going to have to ask that you guys find different people and let them find different people. Again, it's the whole idea. If I have certain kids that are doing it, I have to be okay with allowing the other kids to make mistakes and talk to them about the mistakes that they're making and how to fix it. I shouldn't have to tell everybody you're going to be choosing certain people. Now, Leslie, what I will tell you is that there are very few occasions where I go ahead and I match kids up. Very few occasions, but it's because I like to, throw them for a complete and utter loop. And it's also because sometimes I find that kids get really comfortable with one another, and then they have to learn to work with others that they don't typically work with. So I like to change it up and say, hey guys, I just want you to find somebody else that you don't typically work with. And I know who you work with, so I'll be watching you. But you have to find somebody else that you don't normally work with. And it's just because you've gotten comfortable. And it's okay that you're comfortable, but I want to today push you out of your comfort zone. And I want you to try something different and work with somebody else that you may not agree with. Because we also have to remember, just like in our workplace, we have other teachers in our building that we don't agree with, but we have to work with them, right? Same with our kids. They have other students in their class that they have to work with, even if they don't agree with them. You have to teach them to be collaborative and to be able to work one-on-one with others. If not, it just becomes chaotic and everybody just hates each other. Yes. Okay, so the last thing that I have for you guys is 2 really big tips. The first big tip is that it's okay to stop reading and practice. Okay, you have permission to do that. Even if it's about 3 or 4 months in and you're like, holy moly, everybody's wild. We are losing control. The ship is going down. It's okay to stop and pull them together. This is what I like to call like that Family Matters, Full House moment where like the music comes on and the parents come to the kids and it's that, it's so sweet. And the kids learn the lesson. It's that kind of a moment. So it's okay to stop and practice and talk to them. There have been days where I said, guys, what's happening? And I would let them talk. I wouldn't do the talking. I would let them talk. Well, we're not doing this and we're not doing this. And I would say, guys, what do you think we could do? Because right now, I can't do my job. Right now, I am feeling really stressed. So how can we fix this? And the majority of the time, the kids come up with the solution. And the majority of the time, everybody wants to go back to their tables and they just want to sit and read by themselves. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that at all. So it's okay to stop. The other thing that I'm going to tell you, and this is like my stealth Bridget, I will periodically stand up and walk around. And that was the biggest game changer that I had ever started doing back when I was in kindergarten, was that as I was teaching a small group, I would kind of get these kids turning and talking. I would stand up in the middle of my group and I would just go and do a quick lap. And then I would come back and sit down. And I built those in a lot because kids knew that when I sat down, it didn't mean I wasn't watching or that I wasn't going to come around. It still meant that I cared about what they were doing independently, that they were still someone to me, even though I had kids right in front of me that were doing a lesson. I still cared about what they're doing out there. And so when they know that you care about what they're doing independently, the chances of them working go up. So walk around. Get used to it. Get those steps in. It's good for you. I promise. Okay, I've gone really, really over, and Michelle's going to be like, girl, we said 8 o'clock. I talk too much, obviously. So, I see... So Latoya said, how do you plan to implement this when the term begins, especially with COVID-19? I don't know. I don't know. And I'm assuming that you're talking about like just building the independent piece. I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. Now, if you're talking bridging literacy, I already implement bridging literacy online. It's what I was doing before when we left in March, and I will continue doing the same thing that I was doing. If I start to notice that, because I'm just going to hope and just pray that we are going back like normal. But if I start to see that schools are making decisions as we get closer to school time, I will come on and we'll talk about doing some different lives that I can kind of walk you guys through what it would possibly look like. I know that this 10-part series is about to kind of finish up, and I might have like a mini series is what I've been thinking. Trent has no idea about this. He's looking at me right now, giving me like a what? But I have a mini series that I'm thinking about doing just on how to get kids ready and implement things before you start full-fledged with bridging literacy. Like, what are those essential things that you need to do? What are those first 10 days look like, or those first 20 days? Or, you know, how do we build this, what I'm talking about, up a little bit further? Because this hour and 20 minutes that we've been sitting here talking about this is not enough time for you to really kind of grasp everything that I'm doing. It's not enough. So my thought is to, Michelle says, LOL, I'm waiting. I know, but the hour and 20 minutes is not enough time for me to go in depth about what it should really look like. So my hope is to give you guys like a mini series of kind of just setting some of these up before the beginning of the year. But yes,
That's it.
I don't know. We'll see what it's like. And, you know, we'll just kind of make changes like we do, because that's what teachers do. We adjust and we just roll with it. Rolling with the homies. What movie is that from?
No idea.
It's Clueless.
No.
Okay, here we go, guys. So thank you all so much. I, of course, would love it if you joined the Bridging Literacy community. Hold on, Trent. Boom, link is in the comments. Join the community. I would love for you to join. There are absolutely some benefits into being in the community, and those benefits are only going to continue to grow. There are some, when I say amazing educators in this community, there are amazing teachers and support that you can absolutely get, including a bunch of the different resources that are out there. So thank you guys so much for enduring this hour and 20-minute chat of independent work time. Who would have thunk I had so much to say about this? I appreciate every single one of you. Again, to all of the fathers that are out there, happy Father's Day. I hope that your day was absolutely wonderful, and I hope you guys have a really, really great week. So, bye.